And remember, the fuel for all the metabolism that powers this superorganism and everything else is from photosynthesis. Even only a brief outline of evolution of the biosphere is appropriate here to give you some concept of the geological time frame involved. About 1 billion years ago, conservatively, algal blooms in the oceans were abundant enough to have a direct effect on global climate. When they die and rot, dimethyl sulfide, a rotten egg gas, is liberated. And in it are microscopic particles of sulfur that act as nuclei for droplet formation and therefore for cloud production. Clouds bring rain and have an equally important albedo effect, the albedo effect again, of reflecting sun's heat back away from the surface of the earth. This function in the ocean continues today. It's cloud seeding with a marine biological origin. And considering the vast extent of oceans on the globe compared with continental area, this is a major cooling mechanism. As we shall see in a moment, the equivalent function in terrestrial environments is now known and adds greatly to the concept of the Earth as the green planet, whose health depends on the health of photosynthesizers. Now, by about 650 million years ago, and we're talking in millions now, not billions, multicellular life had evolved by endosymbiosis of bacteria, and the first recognizable sea creatures appear. By 470 million years ago, vertebrate ancestors, which are our ancestors too, the fish, were diversifying, and by then invertebrate sea creatures looked very much like they do today. The next major breakthrough was the invasion of the land world. First land plants, the start of the plant kingdom, at 425 million, when they evolved from green algae with symbiotic help from fungi. By this time, there was sufficient oxygen in the atmosphere for a dense enough ozone layer to be filtering out harmful radiation that had previously made the land world uninhabitable. Once again, this is life making conditions life-friendly by photosynthesis producing oxygen from which ozone is derived. With the coming of plants and vegetation on the land, sediments were converted into soils. Bacteria and fungi, and later invertebrates in this realm, liberated the mineral elements needed for plant food and broke down and recycled organic matter so that it could be absorbed by the roots of plants. Soil that supported vegetation became an important carbon sink. With evolution of biodiverse modern-style vegetation much later, this function has increased greatly. With the establishment of vegetation offering food and cover, animal life emerged from the waters, and you all know the animal kingdom sequence from amphibian to reptile to mammal and to ancestral Homo, if you like, that followed. For the plant kingdom, the sequence was from spore-bearing to seed-bearing, from gymnosperm to angiosperm. The flowering plants and the mammals that now dominate the biota were later rivals. Only 125 million years ago for the plant kingdom, for the flowering plants, and later, a bit later, still around about 95 for mammals. Very late in the evolutionary story that goes back 4 billion years. Even if we only consider the last 100 million years of the biosphere's evolution, that's a long time for all the networks and systems to have been maintaining a life-friendly biosphere and creating the symbiotic superorganism Gaia. By 60 million years ago, mixed Gondwanan forests were widespread over Australia and the southern supercontinent, as I know from my professional work, and equivalent forests existed in the northern hemisphere. The importance of transpiration by forests in maintaining essential water fluxes that affect climate and rainfall is well known. We now know, thanks to recent research by the Sustainable Science team here in Canberra, that when trees are transpiring, they're actually releasing vast clouds of Aerobacter-type microbes in the water vapor. And these microbes form nuclei for droplet formation and hence for cloud formation. The resulting albedo cooling effect, this is the albedo again, particularly of forests, and of extremely biodiverse tropical forests more particularly still, is of great significance. This is the equivalent biological function for terrestrial environments to the marine one, where gases from dead plankton contain sulfur particles as droplet nuclei. And this again is biological cloud seeding on a vast global scale, helping to maintain a suitable temperature range. Presumably, this symbiosis between bacteria, plants, and environment has existed through enormous lengths of geological time, and it's just another example of the complexity of systems that keep the Earth life-friendly. The sequestration of carbon in standing forests has long been seen as a valuable contribution in the battle against rising greenhouse gases. It's been shown recently that biodiverse natural temperate forests are 10 times more efficient as carbon sinks than was originally thought, and plantation forests that lack the biodiversity of natural ones are far less valuable sinks. Tropical forests have always been known to have a role in cooling equatorial regions, but it has yet to be recognized that the health of the living planet depends on the presence of sufficient biodiverse photosynthesizing, transpiring, and cloud seeding natural vegetation, much of it in the form of forests, for the natural balancing mechanisms and feedback systems that keep Gaia healthy to be able to function. When you see things from this perspective, the current climate change problems are caused by the breakdown of Gaian regulatory systems, and the rising levels of greenhouse gases are symptoms of this fundamental breakdown, not the primary cause. This is not to say that the symptoms need not be dealt with. They are now contributing to the serious problems, but the causes must be recognized and healing must start at once. To use a human analogy, concentrating on controlling greenhouse gas emissions is like giving aspirin to bring down the fever in a patient that has a serious disease of vital organs without, at the same time, treating the disease. Now, against this background of the outline, let's see what changes humans have made since they ceased being hunter-gatherers, governed like all other species by natural laws, and became increasingly technological farmers first, before industrialization, of course, changed everything. In other words, let's see what was the natural vegetation of the world in the regions most affected when land clearing, cultivation, animal domestication, etc., began in earnest. If we only go back 12,000 years ago to recovery after the last glacial stage of the Pleistocene Ice Age was complete. At that time, most northern hemisphere lands were heavily forested, including Britain, much of northern Europe, and much of North America. Lands around the Mediterranean were forested or well vegetation, as were the Middle Eastern lands of biblical times. And the equatorial forests were at that stage completely intact. Look at it now, and 80% of those original forests have gone globally. Desertification of biblical lands and North Africa has occurred, and equatorial forests are being destroyed at an unbelievable rate globally. Their fiery destruction accounts for 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are contributing to global warming. In fact, on that video link, the first one yesterday, the gentleman there said they accounted for 30%. So it's certainly a huge amount of global warming gases.